Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the November edition of the Patch Tuesday Support Group, a safe place to talk about patching, I guess. My name is Brian Dam. I'm a patch lover extraordinaire here at Patch My PC. We are joined by a different set of a group today, a different set of faces. Jordan, our B team, he is traveling with our A team, which is Carrie. They're both out today, so Jake today is filling in for Jordan and Carrie. Andrew's stepping up to the plate. He's going to go ahead and monitor the chat and interrupt us with super fun, exciting things you say. And we're also joined with Missy, who's going to come and talk to us a little bit about some home automation techniques at the end. So as always, we'll kick off with some security stuff from Jake. He's going to talk to us about some of the fun data we've seen this month. Then I'll bring some news, and then Missy will bring us in the end. And then after that, we'll stick around for Q&A as long as as long as we can. I'm an idiot and did not charge my headset, so I'm down to like 18%. So, we'll see.
Those get like a good 10 hours of battery life though, Brian.
I hope so. That's what I'm hoping. So with
XM5s, Sony, yeah?
Yep.
MX5s,
you got it.
You're good.
We'll find out. All right,
Jake. Are we the C team? Hold on, I have to clarify. Are we the C team then?
I don't even think we're that high up, man.
Yeah.
I think we're in like the double, we're like the DF team or something like that.
I am offended. You guys pull me into the
you
F
brought us
team.
up. Yeah, we were way lower before.
You came at a bit of a low point, Missy.
Perfect. Thanks for dragging me in, guys. Love it.
Well, obviously, I am no replacement for Jordan, but luckily, he did give me some numbers to go over. This month specifically, there were 90 reported CVEs. However, depending on how you score and relate them, kind of impacts the count that you'll find on a whole lot of different websites. Let's see. He's got some nice statistics here. So as far as counts go, a defense in depth, there was a count of 1. Denial of service, there were 4. 28 elevation of privilege CVEs, 1.
Now, Jake, I'm going to interrupt you. There was a beautiful visualization.
I'm going to get to that, Brian.
You're going to get to it?
Like that. This information that he gave is not in the visualization.
Oh, you're killing me.
I'm killing.
I'll shut up then.
All right.
Sorry,
1 information disclosure, 52 remote code executions, 2 security feature bypasses, and 3 for spoofing. And Brian had mentioned that, yes, there is a beautiful screen that I will show here shortly. As you can imagine, it's actually hard to see your screen when you have glasses on. Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Starting a meeting normally. All right, awesome.
Which is good because he can't.
Yeah, exactly. And it's in dark mode, so yeah, of course. But on the Microsoft update side of things, earlier, I mentioned there were 90. Again, depending on how you score it, it'll look differently on different sites. In this case, there were 78 vulnerabilities. Only 32 of them actually have KBs associated with them. Pretty interesting statistics. Again, 35 critical, 21 important. Again, I can't even see that color. Moderate, we've got 8, and then not applicable over here as well. There is one CVE in particular that I thought was kind of interesting. CVE 2024-49032, which I'll throw in the chat here, assuming I can find Zoom on my taskbar, because once again,
I got it for you, Jake.
I'll wait. Actually, boom, I see it. Amazing. Andrew, you're a god, but there is a link for it. This one's super interesting because it is specifically for Office, a graphics remote code execution vulnerability. So definitely go out and get the patches for that. Again, on the website, they're all listed towards the bottom, the patches that are associated with it. Moving on to the Patch My PC side of things. Again, Jordan has provided another beautiful graphic for us here. In the month of November, we had 1,506 unique updates, 18 of which were for Google Chrome and a whopping 20 for Edge. Normally, I think Chrome outpaces Edge there a little bit. And then 18 in Firefox and 14 in Opera, 38 unique vulnerabilities, and vulnerability depth of 93. I'm going to be honest here. I'm not super familiar with the vulnerability depth. Brian, I don't know if you have any information on that.
That's a made-up number.
Yeah, I feel like it is. Jordan just puts numbers in there and goes with it. But
perfect.
Nonetheless, we've got the information. But that kind of wraps up the CVE counts as far as Jordan's security piece.
But Jordan's literally in the chat.
In the chat typing.
He is. I think he's driving to the airport as we speak too. So
absolutely, it's the cross section of what? We don't even know
Yeah,
what
it's
that
the
means.
like. What does that mean? Like, is it like the deli and the bread aisle cross section, or
I don't even see anything crossing here. What?
Yeah.
Listen, I'm just super happy knowing that Jordan's like sitting there like frustrated on his drive and trying not to
it's the
crash his
cross
car.
section
So-
of duplicates where I can't. It's hard to read. 'Cause
Ah,
the chat's scrolling.
where
Where a
vulnerabilities-
vulnerability is in multiple patches. Interesting.
like I said, it sounds like a made up number.
I agree.
I stand by my
Mhm.
previous statement. Well, thank you, Jake.
Happy
Let me,
to somewhat fill Jordan's shoes.
you certainly, you nailed it. That's
I
all
read the
can say.
numbers.
That's all you needed to do.
You-
That's
When it came to reading numbers, you done it.
I did an average job. Thank you, Brian.
Average job. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the news. So United Healthcare earlier this month, or sorry, late last month, said they apparently had 100 million stolen info. If anyone is counting, I believe that's roughly 1/3 of the U.S. population. So that's a thing. That's a heck of a number of people to compromise. So that's just the beautiful trend. Again, we've been doing this for so many years. Certain things sort of keep coming back up. If you use Fortinet at all, FortiManager and FortiCloud, I believe, are the ones, those products. There's a pretty high CVSS score there, 9.8. So that is, I believe that's considered remoteable. So if you're using any of the Fortinet's products, you're going to want to go ahead and pay attention to that. This one is just, oh yeah, great, awesome. This one is just super fun. And it is actually, believe it or not, somewhat related to technology. A bill has finally gone into effect that impacts repair, right to repair. And that finally might mean that McDonald's ice cream machines might be able to start working, which means that our own Justin Chalfant, who's the founder here of Patch My PC, who, if you go on to LinkedIn, is highly rated as a Taylor ice cream machine technician. And I would encourage everyone on this call who has LinkedIn to go in and bump those numbers up. That if this whole patching thing doesn't work out for him, this is definitely Plan B. So we're all excited, not just for ourselves, for McFlurry's, but also for Justin personally. I don't know if Haley's on the call, but Pokemon developer, so not Pokemon directly, but one of their developers had a leak. So suddenly, if you were interested in Pokemon, you saw a whole bunch of prototype Pokemon ideas pop up. And that is because indeed Game Freak, the developer, had a hack and a whole bunch of data got stolen. So that's kind of fun if you're a huge Pokemon fan.
I'm shocked they haven't run out of ideas yet. For
I
new
know, right?
Pokemon.
I know. And if you are a total Japanese enthusiast, you can read the actual response in Japanese. I'm sending this specifically for Jordan, who I'm sure has learned Japanese because he's that kind of nerd. Moving on, guess who also has lost stuff? This wasn't a hack, but Microsoft kind of humorously simply lost about a month's worth of security logs, or said it just never collected them. So that's just kind of funny. I mean, it's not really a problem, but if you did have an incident in the last month and you were relying on their products to go ahead and do the work to figure out what went wrong, yeah, they just didn't have those logs. And if you want to read out why, if you want to learn why, you can go ahead and read through that article. Another kind of less security, but just if you are running a home lab, this might be interesting to you. So VMware made Workstation and Fusion free. So there's been kind of a back and forth on this over the last year. So VMware sold off to Broadcom. Broadcom busted out their end user computing stuff to Omnissa. And some of the things that, I think ESXi, if I'm getting that right, is something that's somewhat popular for people running home labs. That, everything kind of went behind a paywall, and that was, people were less than happy about it. Things that were free were not free. Some of those things are free again, I guess. And
It's
again,
interesting that it's also free for commercial use as well, not just educational and personal.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're like, but we're still going to, we're still going to invest in it. Somewhere in here, they basically say that. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, we're actively investing in new features. It's like, really? Like, I mean,
How? Like,
yeah,
I mean,
I know, right?
arguably, you could say you have a single dev on the team and they're actively, they're working.
Microsoft says that
Yeah.
all the time. So like we could just,
Yeah.
they're just following suit, I guess. But no, like how
Yeah.
do you take away or how do you give something to commercial partners? How are you going to continue to make your money? That's just so weird.
Well, I
Uh,
imagine it's like an entryway into some of their higher tier products as a
It's
result. But
it's a gateway drug to get you onto their other stuff.
So
yeah.
it's the beginning of the unshittification of VMware then. That's what I'm
Yes.
hearing.
Yeah.
Yes, cool. Okay.
I mean, the other thing is that I think support, like that's the other part where that comes in.
Yeah.
So like,
I didn't
so
see
somewhere-
no
yeah, right.
support's done through the forums, they say. So after your license is done, after like
Okay.
if you have this on a commercial contract, they'll support
Uh-huh.
you through that contract. After that, it's to the forums with
really?
you.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So I
Okay.
think it is to get them on there. Broadcom is known for making their money on very, very large contracts with very,
Right.
very large customers. So I think I don't think they're concerned with making their money on these products that have already been built. They'll just do bug fixes on them and get more people on those huge contracts.
Right.
Bye,
Which is why
Jordan.
it was.
Jordan's got to go. TSA needs him now.
Which is why I was, which is why when they initially kind of put them behind the paywall and said, "Oh, these aren't going to be free anymore," everyone's like, "What? Like for real? Like that's really dumb. You can't possibly be making money here." And to your point, it's a gateway drug to larger contracts.
Especially
so,
with all the competitors out there that do have a free variant.
right,
Yep.
right. I mean, personally, for my home lab, I've always used, Hyper-V, and then my friends who run like crazy home labs are kind of laughing at me, like, "That's dumb. Why would you do that? Like, go use this." And I'm always like, I don't know, it just kind of works. So like, I'm probably not the right one to talk to about that, but I definitely know I've read enough, r/home lab stuff to be like, oh yeah, everyone was really pissed off when this happened. And so they reverted, I guess. So good on them. Question mark? I don't know. Awesome.
Yeah. Question.
Yeah. The Internet Archive got hacked again while they were trying to restore their stuff. So basically what happened is somebody managed to get some tokens that they use in their Zendesk product, which is where I believe they take in their I don't know.
Wasn't that the
tickets.
original
I don't know what.
one? Did they use
Yeah.
the exact same method
No.
again?
No, so they were hacked. But hacked here means like somebody was able to send out a crap ton of emails to via their system. So I don't think they were defaced, but somebody was able, while they were restoring their stuff, somebody was able to further get into Zendesk and like send out a bunch of emails. I don't know. Read this. That's why I have this.
We already covered
tell
that
me if
I'm
I'm wrong.
barely able to read, Brian. I need you to
Yeah,
tell
we'll
me
take
about
the
it.
glasses
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
To be clear,
That's not going to help.
Just so everyone knows, all these links are in the resources tab down at the bottom.
Yes, thank you.
And they'll be
the
available on YouTube later as well.
And how? The SEC charges 4 companies for misleading cyber disclosure. This is funny because this is specific to the SolarWinds hack, which was what, 2021 or something. So this is like, hey, 3-4 years ago, y'all got hacked and you just kind of lied about it. And the SEC is finally getting sweet justice from all of,
Now, was it
4 people.
did they truly know and they just like said we're not going
Yeah.
to disclose it, or did they just like not know that they got hacked?
They, for the most place, they downplayed it, right? They're like, we were involved, but like nothing really bad happened. And no, actually bad things happened. I mean, that's an oversimplification, but this wasn't that they, and maybe that's why it took a bit longer. This wasn't quite cut and dry, like, hey, you got hacked and you didn't tell people about it. It's like, well, you got hacked, but you kind of knowingly lied about.
You downplayed it, like
threat.
you said. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, well, let's see
So
how
that's-
well this gets enforced.
Well, I don't know how big any of these companies are, but like, I guess I've heard of Avaya, so I don't think.
Checkpoint and Mimecast I'm pretty familiar with.
Okay. Like,
So the biggest
is-
thing is that there was the law that was reverted by the Supreme Court that said these
Oh.
the little shoot offs can't enforce anything if that's not an actual law. So these
Got it.
companies can turn around and say, no, we don't want to pay it. You can't enforce this. And so we'll see what happens. But I'm glad the SEC is trying.
Right. An effort is being made, but
Yep.
they may not actually collect. Oh, that's
Yep.
fine.
Yeah.
A moment for our sweet, sweet justice system. All right, moving on. The CISA came out with some new recommendations for organizations of all sorts. And I think, if I remember right, I don't think it's specifically said. I think it's more what was unsaid in here, or maybe I'm making this up. Like the lack of having to reset passwords, or did that happen before? But they came out with a new set of backgrounds for how you, new set of recommendations for how you would secure things. I mean, it says restricted transaction, but it's really talking about things such as like, how do you protect your login? You should enable MFA, these kinds of things. But you know, it's a new round of suggestions, which tends to filter up over the next year or two into other standards that we all get to know and love and have to follow. So that's somewhat really newsworthy for that point. I think this is just a duplicate on that Fortinet. But this is if you're using Fortinet, FortiManager or FortiManager Cloud, there is a pretty bad vulnerability this month, and you should definitely take a look. If you're using any of PTZ Optics point, these are PTZ. What is PTZ? Like pan, tilt, and zoom. And so these are very popular very popular cameras and cheap to use in security. What's the right word? Yeah, security, hospitals, all those kinds of places. And there's two vulnerabilities with in these cameras themselves, and it's like what 9.8. I'm looking at my notes here. They're kind of way up there. And some of these by default can connect to your network and then connect to cloud-based services, and all of that is probably not great. If you want this is kind of the more news article. If you want the real nitty-gritty, here's the actual person that found this issue and talks about it in the nittiest gritty.
Can you accept the cookies there, Brian? I can't read the rest.
No,
of the
no, I'm not accepting cookies.
You can't read anyway, Jake. It's fine.
I'll be able to read it after the recording.
It was funny. I saw a tweet that said, like, the Europe has spent something like 500 or 700 million hours in this 1 year just dealing with cookie banners. It's kind of funny because man, I'm seeing them all the time now, even as an American, and it's super annoying. Moving along, Sophos, which is a large security vendor. They kind of came out and actually did something that is sort of unique. They actually talked about, hey, we get hacked all the time. Or sorry, not hacked all the time. We are constantly under attack all of the time. And here they're getting really specific about who, right? Like, we are constantly under attack by China-based groups. And I believe here they even talk about like starting to fight back a little bit, which is very unique. So this is an interesting read if this is your kind of thing. What would it be like to work at a company where you just know? Most of us work at companies where we might academically know, we're probably, there's probably somebody who's tried to has attacked us and has tried to get in. But imagine working at a company where you just absolutely know, not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, every single year. Like, we are always actively under attack. And so this is just a real kind of, for me, kind of was an eye-opening and interesting read of like, oh man, that's what it's like to live that life.
Meanwhile,
also,
I'm still here buying stuff on AliExpress.
Right, exactly. Also, I don't want to live that life, but it's interesting to know a little bit about what that life might look like. If you use any of Aruba's access points, which are now part of HPE, which is Hewlett Packard Enterprise, which is the laptop and desktop part of side of HP. There is another pretty highly rated. Let me see what my notes are. Yeah, it's another one, 9.8. So it's not good. You want to go ahead and rush out and patch those as soon as you can. D-Link, yeah. So this is sort of one of those. Well, what did you expect was going to happen? A bunch of their modems that went end of life. Somebody found a vulnerability with it. A particularly, again, not a particularly happy vulnerability. Again, 9.8. Man, that number keeps coming up this month. Which is, it's 9.8 out of 10. It's almost as bad as you can get. But they're like, well, they're end of life, and we are not going to fix them, which is, understandably,
Fair
I
if
guess.
they're end of life.
Right.
No.
Right.
Now,
But
were they end of life before this was found out, or did they end of life them after it was found out?
no. I don't think they're they aren't reactively end of lifing these things because we're just not going to fix it. It's just their end of life.
Mhm.
They don't make them anymore. And to be fair, I don't know what D-Links. With Microsoft, I kind of know what the life cycle is. So I don't actually know preemptively what the life cycle is when D-Link releases a new product. Is it 10, 15 years or months? I honestly don't know.
I mean,
but
props for them for their things lasting that long, if any.
I mean, I still nope, I think it's still there. I still have a WGRT or whatever that you could run custom
The purple
firmware on.
one?
Like I was blue one. Or no, you're right, purple. You're right, purple. Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't running their firmware on it, but I was running other stuff. But anyways, if you're running a D-Link modem, you might look off to the left or under your desk and see if it's still end of life or not. Because if not, you kind of have a problem. And here's D-Link's. Here's a link to their actual deeper, not the reporting, the actual report, the actual deets from D-Link. In case you're impacted and you want to know, here's a specific model of modem. DSL, I'll read it for you there, Jake. DSL 6740C. If you're using one of those, go ahead and do something that's not that. So that's mostly security news. Let's talk a little bit about Config Manager and Intune. So Config Manager actually had a rollup for 2403. Now, they had a rollup a few months ago, and then that rollup was not good, and they pulled that back and they re-rolled it out. This is yet after that. And very specifically, what this fixes, is if you have devices reaching out over the CMG, and you also have branch cache configured. There was an issue, and we've actually seen this. I don't know that this fixes the issue, but we've actually come across this here at Patch My PC, that branch cache is enabled, and that interferes with actual downloads. So that's the fix for that. Especially if you have devices that are remote, connecting over CMG, and you've configured branch cache, and you are having download issues, go ahead and apply this hotfix. What's new in Intune? I always have kind of an opinionated take. I was never really doing the MDM thing, so I'm sure there's people that love to manage iOS and Android devices. It's never me. So for me, not a lot this month. I think the big one here is Autopilot V2, or also known as device preparation, that is now in China. So if you have if you are managing devices in China, moment of silence for you, but also now you can use AppGet V2. So another kind of big thing that happened is obviously Server 2025 was released. Got GA'd, I believe, on November 1st. And very quickly after that, there were some concerns. Some people were seeing that it was installing where they would not have expected it to install. That is, it's installing itself. Other people were noticing, well, I checked for updates in Server 2022 and 2019, and I believe even 2012, and you would actually get a feature update, an optional feature update showing in the UI. Microsoft did a really, really bad job of doing the communication on this. The only communication, so what actually happened? Microsoft decided that they would release feature updates for the Server OS product. And when I say feature update, I mean doing an in-place upgrade via the software update mechanism or process, right? I think hitherto that is unheard of. If you're going to update the OS, you were going to bust out a WIM or an ISO, and you were going to, right, you needed a full-blown task sequence to run setup.exe through some mechanism. So this is the first time, I believe, in history where they went ahead and released a feature update for the server OS product. And their announcement on that was this piddly little blog that didn't have any information except for a link to a video that itself barely looked like it came from Microsoft, except for the fact it was Microsoft people. So like, if you Google search for this, you came up with almost nothing. I know this because I Google searched for this and came up with almost nothing.
You should have used Bing, Brian. That was your mistake.
Yep, that's the problem. Absolutely. Should have used Bing.
Yes. Yes. I have learned the errors of my ways.
Yeah,
but I'm still not going to use Bing.
I'm very surprised that you're surprised Microsoft has not been very loud about this. Like, they have never been pleased about announcing their mistakes. So,
but to be clear though, when I say announcing, I don't mean the announcing, oh, we screwed up. I'm talking about letting people know that we are going to do something for the first time
That
ever.
this is going to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to release feature updates for server 2025. That's not a mistake. Like, that's okay. That's fine. People just needed to know that they were going to do that, and that, hey, this would show up in, you're running server 2022.
It does feel like there's been a little bit of a trend though, Brian. Like, hey, we're going to release recall and there's no security features around it. Obviously there was backlash from the community, but
yeah, I'd also I think that's probably why they didn't end up doing it. They didn't want to deal with the backlash because they knew they were making a poor decision. Because everyone loves automatic updates, right?
To their credit, they fixed it, but
But okay, so that's the crux of the issue though, Missy. This wasn't an automatic update, right? Like, no, and so here's the thing. No one using Microsoft's tooling for managing updates, no Microsoft tool automatically installed Server 2025 on any device. What happened here, and I write about this, I went ahead, and there's a whole bunch of misinformation here. Various media outlets so the reports were all coming from third-party patching tools. And then what happened is one of those RMMs, so those RMMs released a statement saying, oh, blah, 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 and they threw Microsoft under the bus. Then a whole bunch of media outlets in tech news took that as gospel and said, oh, Microsoft screwed up, which was not true. It was never true. Microsoft did exactly what they said they were going to do. They did it exactly they said they were going to do it, and they did it exactly correctly. Okay.
So it sounds more like the RMM just saw, hey, it was a quality update and pushed it forward, since it's the first time they've ever actually done a release like this. Yes.
Part of the crux is a misunderstanding of what KBs are. So KB stands for knowledge base article or knowledge bulletin. Take your pick. Those are text. KBs are text. Like, that's what they're a bulletin about knowledge. There's nothing more than that. Now, if you do patching a lot, you're like, well, KBs get assigned to patches, and so there's a tendency to equate a certain KB to a certain set of patches. And I don't blame you for jumping to that conclusion, but that conclusion is what some RMMs did, and it caught them. That's what caught them out. In part, that's what caught them out, which is like, oh, this is a Windows 11. This is a KB for Windows 11 updates, and that was not true. Because you could go to the Microsoft catalog and you could look at that KB and you could see that, no, there's a server not a server 2025, but a server OS 24H2 release update. So there was a CU for servers right there in the catalog. But the other problem that people often don't understand, and this is what I talk about in the blog, is there's no single source of truth for anything related to Windows updates. So there's at least three channels. There's the Windows Update channel. That's the cloud thing, right? That's the cloud. So that's when if you go back to Windows 95 days, it wasn't called Windows Update then, or I don't think it was, but you're hitting a cloud service, and that has its own set of updates. There's also catalog.microsoftupdate.com or whatever, and that you can download and search for updates. That's a separate set of updates. And then there's a set of updates that get deployed, that get offered to the WSUS feed. WSUS, I say WSUS and the thus config manager, right? And those are three separate sets of updates. There's no single source of truth for querying those. And so what happened here is that Microsoft released the feature update, and they only released it to the Windows Update channel. So you don't see it in WSUS. You can't see it in the catalog. So we as users have admins even, have absolutely no way of knowing that update existed, except if you looked at a device where it was being offered, and if you dig into the internals, you can see, oh, here's an update being delivered. It's applicable to this device. And if you dig into it, which I did here in this blog, it's labeled as a upgrade. That is the classification. Classification is upgrade, which is a feature update. And so again, Microsoft did everything right in terms of the metadata and giving it the KB. Sorry, it also received the KB of this month's patches, right? That's what the RMMs struggle to understand, because that FU includes this month's patches, right? So that is correct. They did the right thing. Just some people made some assumptions about how KBs work, and we're doing patching based on that. Now I'm guessing, but my educated guess is that they were saying, well, go install this KB, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't realize that, well, maybe there's a feature update that's tied to that KB. And I think that caught a bunch of people. Now, when I say a bunch of people, I mean, like, I'm talking single digit RMMs that I've heard of that got caught out by this. So, and even that one was like, well, it only impacted 7% of our customers, right? So a very, very, very small number of devices were impacted by this, but it is kind of a big freaking deal, and it caught people off guard because they didn't even know this was going to happen. And so, yeah, it made a lot of waves. Microsoft did pull back the feature update, so they did remove it from Windows Update, so it's no longer applicable. Part of why this was specifically problematic is because unlike Windows 10 and 11 feature upgrades, you can't roll back. So if you had this happen to you, you are screwed. You either have a backup, or you're going to use Windows 2025, Server 2025 from now on, or you're going to nuke and pave and go back to Server 2022 or whatever you're using before, right? There's no rollback option here. Also complicating matters is that I believe there's kind of a change in licensing for Server 2025, and I don't have the details. I would never pretend to understand Microsoft licensing, but a lot of people that were reporting this said, well, if we buy we don't have software insurance, we have OEM or resale licenses, and so all of a sudden they get automatically updated to Server 2025, and it's saying I'm not licensed, right? So, yeah, it was a problem. So, and the problem is really kind of was made difficult by the fact that if it worked at all, you might be unlicensed. So, okay, I feel like I boiled the ocean on that. If anybody has questions, we can dig into it later in the Q&A section. I want to move on and then give Missy some time here. PPTP and L2TP are now deprecated. Now, deprecated does not mean removed. This is kind of similar to the WSUS discussion we had last month or the month before. Deprecated doesn't mean it's removed. It is in Server 2025. But what it does sort of, what it suggests is that it may not be in Server 2028, right? So you look at this deprecation announcement, it's okay, that's fine. You don't have to change anything today, but Server 2028 may not include these things. So that's not said in this article, because what they do clarify is deprecated doesn't mean we're removing it. It just means we can remove it. And so if you are using those things, this is very specific to Microsoft's built-in VPNs, I believe. There's probably some other technologies that are built on that, but just be aware of those things.
That article looks much more thought out than the WSUS one. It's like, hey, let's talk over the considerations and
yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And WSUS was like, yeah, it's deprecated. Pay us money.
Yeah, and it actually took me a while. So we had talked about, and I wrote about it's like, well, why would they deprecate this? Because it doesn't really. We're talking about WSUS now, right?
Yeah.
Why would they deprecate this? They haven't done any patches. They haven't touched that code in forever, apart from like actually having a gun to their head saying you have to make this work because we're releasing a new OS, or we don't want to keep doing non-UUP updates just for Windows 11 just to support WSUS.
There's a couple people in chat saying they can't hear. I don't know if there's anyone else I see. Okay.
Some people had to leave and rejoin. Okay.
Yeah, Zoom things. Who,
Cool.
who-
It'll
We
be
could- hey.
available on YouTube later as well if you want to see this
Hey.
very specific segment.
we could be using Teams. Just keep that in mind.
You
Yeah.
could be using Slack.
We could be using. Let's not do that.
Let's go TeamSpeak, some Ventrilo.
So to get back to Rampart, the WSIS thing is like, oh, why would they deprecate it? And it took me a while to click, oh, maybe they just deprecate it so they can remove it in 2028, right? So that's when I look at this announcement about L2TP, PPTP, and L2TP, I put that under the WSIS thing of, oh, okay, they're not removing it. It's in 2025. You got 10 years at least from November 1st of 2024. So you got to November 1st, 2034 to deal with this. So you should deal with it. I'm not saying ignore it, but it does suggest that maybe it's not going to be in server in 2028, which might impact your, in 3 years, you might say, oh, well, we can't, we're going to have to address this if we want to go ahead and move to 2028. Another thing that we've been waiting a very, very long time for is Microsoft Connected Cache. And I'm going to put standalone in front of that. So standalone Microsoft Connected Cache. I could talk about this for like 15, 20 minutes, but I'm not going to. If you are using Intune, especially,
It's awesome, is I think the definition, Brian.
yeah, absolutely, it is great. And if you wish Intune had some kind of
DP.
distribution point like
Yeah.
feature, that is what this is. And so if that's interesting to you for whatever reason, go ahead and jump all over this. It is now in public preview, which is great. So that means you can go ahead and install it. It is fully supported. I think they're hoping for GA sometime next year.
It's nice they got education in there right away too. Normally they're waiting a little while.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but there's no cost to them for this, right? There's no
True.
right. Like there's no OpEx for running MCC. I guess maybe there's some because it's, I guess, slightly reporting and managing the cloud. So fair enough. Okay. I shouldn't say there's zero OpEx, but it doesn't really, I don't think it really scales. So good on them. I'm trying to move on. So Missy has some time here. Windows 11 24H2. It's out. Our friend Michael Niehaus wrote a nice little blog here about, okay, great, it's out. But what does that mean? And what you should, some things to think through as you roll these things out. Apparently it is crashing on some Intel motherboards. So if you might want to read that if you are in your process. I'm sure many of you have Intel motherboards. So keep an eye on that. We mentioned recall.
Someone mentioned for Windows 11 24H2, there's Mac and KMS activation issues as well.
Okay.
So maybe that's one that needs to be held off on a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't find an actual source. I couldn't find a Microsoft source for this, so I'm going to say this with a grain of salt. But here, there was some reporting I found to know Microsoft is going to yet again delay recall. Again, I don't want to boil the ocean on recall. If you don't know what recall is, it's basically AI reading constant
Screenshots. Yeah.
And there was a whole bunch of concerns about that. And Microsoft was going to install it by default, and they said no, we're not going to do that. It's going to be optional, and we'll release it later. And they've yet again apparently backed off on that. So recall might yet be delayed again. And then lastly, again, this is not first source, but Mary Jo Foley, she's usually pretty good at this. Often when you do some subscription for Microsoft, it is a yearly commitment. You don't have an option to pay monthly. So you buy it for a year and you have to pay for it up front. Now you can pay monthly, but you will be charged a 5% premium doing that. If you actually care about how much you pay for these things and how you pay for it, absolutely go read this.
I mean, they've had a monthly though, Brian. I mean, it's called pay as you go, right? Are they just saying they're adding a 5% on top of that now, or? It's for licensing. It looks like if you scroll down a little bit. Okay, interesting.
Right, it's for specific. Sorry, maybe good question. That wasn't clear. I'm talking about like not Azure, right? So a lot of Azure things are all pay as you go. But my understanding is
you could pay month to month on the licensing as well. It was obviously a little bit more expensive, so it just sounds like they're tacking on an extra 5.
Right.
I haven't read the article though, so that's just my assumption.
Yep. There's a whole bunch of things that are going to get that. I guess maybe like I know Copilot I think was one where you couldn't do it by the month, and now you can. It's just going to cost you a little more. So, and there's also some Teams stuff. So Microsoft busted Teams out of whatever the M365, and so just across the board, some of those licenses are going up. So if you use any of those things, go ahead and take a look. Whew. Okay. I spent another 20, 30 minutes talking about that stuff. Sorry for you all having to hear me talk for that long.
There's a lot of good information though, Brian. Don't sell yourself short.
It's okay. With that, I hand over to Missy. Missy, we thanks for joining us. If you you might want to introduce yourself a little bit. I know many of the people here. I know of you. So anyways, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you guys had me. Lovely. So for those of you who don't know me, some of you might actually know me from my time on Microsoft Edge. I'm Missy Corey. I am now the community and social media manager for Home Assistant. Some of you might actually know Home Assistant because of it's a smart home automation that respects your privacy. And a lot of you really kind of like that locality kind of automation stuff. Don't like the big box Google or Apple or Amazon kind of things, right? So I kind of wanted to hop on and talk a little bit about some things that changed this year with Home Assistant because some of you may not be aware of it. One of the things that our founder, Paulus, did was he created the Open Home Foundation. So much like Mozilla's foundation is for open browsing and Signals is for open communication, the Open Home Foundation is specifically to make sure that open home protocols are supported, that local is actually supported. So our values are built on privacy, choice, and sustainability. What we did to make sure Home Assistant, which is an open source project, we're actually the largest open source project on GitHub now with 21,000 contributors year over year. And so being that large, we had to make sure we protected the open source project, and Paulus donated Home Assistant to the Open Home Foundation so that it's protected. And in order to maintain that protection, we actually built the foundation in Switzerland, which has some of the strictest laws when it comes to foundations overall. So we are not for sale. We want to keep Home Assistant free and open for everybody that's actually who wants to build this stuff. So I wanted to talk briefly about that. I know there's some drama in the world. If you haven't been paying attention to the WordPress stuff, I don't know anybody in the tech industry who hasn't been paying attention to this though. So our system is set up a little bit differently where we actually handed everything over to the Open Home Foundation while the WordPress Foundation is not nearly as set up to protect things as others are. So one of the things I think a lot of people don't know about me is that I'm new to Home Assistant overall. I'm a new user. A lot of you might be very technical. You're used to YAML. You're used to white space coding. You're used to building up things to make them work in your work life. So you want to be able to build up and have those customizations in your home life as well. But I'm still so new to it that I have really basic automations. I have some lights controlled. I have some stupid things set up specifically for controlling a light when my dog is in our mudroom, right? Like sometimes you need a space for your, where you have to adjust a automation manually. And some of the stuff we've been working on for Home Assistant is changing our dashboards specifically, because the dashboards were not easy to work with. It was based on masonry before, and now we have a new sections dashboard that actually lets you go through, create dashboards a lot more easier. If you're familiar with Home Assistant, there was a add-on you could end up installing called Mushroom Cards. We hired the developer of that, and so he's helped us build a lot of the stuff for our dashboards this year. So I kind of wanted to see if anybody had questions for me, if you wanted to talk to me about Home Assistant, if you wanted to talk to me about Edge, my time on Edge. So there's a lot of things I could probably give insight for. But really, I just kind of wanted to thank Jake, who dragged me into this. He and I have been
Kicking and
friends.
screaming, right?
You really did, absolutely. But it's I've been friends with Jake for several years now. Patch My PC has been something I have been very aware of overall. And so I'm just very pleased to actually be on here and listen to you guys talk about what's new and the industry stuff. Some of that stuff I didn't even know about, honestly, because it's not my area of expertise, but it's still good information to have on my side of things, since, you know, our community puts Home Assistant on some really weird things. So like some of them have it on Nooks, some of them have it on servers built in your home, specifically built up with Proxmox. Like, you guys have some complicated setups if you're using Home Assistant. I'm still so super basic, but getting all this information really was enlightening. So thanks for having me on, seriously.
I see there's
Well,
already some questions in chat, like the first one about Edge. Like, did you come up with the rounded corners in Edge?
No, I didn't. The vertical tabs are in Edge because of me, though.
Thank you for that.
Yes, but it was one of the differentiators that Firefox users wanted to see specifically in Edge because Chrome wasn't supporting it, but other Chromium browsers were, so they knew it was possible. And I pushed the tabs feature owner to make sure that vertical tabs were actually in there overall. So no, that's in there because of me. You can thank me for that.
And I do see William, like, how does one dip their toe? And I see someone did link a link to the installation guide, but I mean, any tips from you there?
Yeah, so if you're brand new to this, there's a learning curve. The difference between this and say Google Home, Apple Home stuff is that it's a hobby. It really is something you have to invest time into. It's not as simple as the big boxes who really do make it magic. Like they make it work so easily for consumers. But the link actually shared for the installation can show you how you can install it. There's a variety of ways to go through and do it. I highly suggest using my community to help you. Like we have our forums, we have our Discord server. I can actually get links for that. But even myself, like I'm still so new to the product that I don't know how a lot of it works. I'm not an engineer. I wasn't hired on as an engineer. So I use my community heavily to actually help me get through some stuff, because as much as I love the information we have out there, our documentation sucks. Like really, it's not great.
I think even when I was setting it up, I had to message you. It was like, hey, like I'm having some issues here.
Yep, exactly.
But once it got going,
like, hang on.
Yeah, well, and I think it's interesting too, because like even if you have some of those like Alexa or like Google Home products, you can incorporate those into Home Assistant as well. So it's not like you lose anything you've had previously, which is nice.
Yeah, no, and being able to pull in those multiple platforms in one area to control, you're not going through multiple apps and controlling your lights. You're not going through multiple apps and controlling the voice. Like you can actually implement these things. If you want to use the Google Assistant and Alexa stuff, sorry if I triggered anybody's devices, you have to get a Home Assistant cloud subscription. Actually, I saw someone else early in the chat say that they are supporters of us, which thank you. We're 100% bootstrapped by our community. So if you are getting the subscription or if you're paying for the subscription for cloud, you're paying my salary, you're paying my company's salary. Like we are 100% supported by the community. We have no investors, no VCs. So yeah, if you want to support anything that I do or my company does, and you don't even use Home Assistant, you can get Home Assistant Cloud. Like it's
what, like it's $5 or $6 if I remember right. Like it's incredibly cheap for a subscription.
Yeah, so $6 a month or $65 for a year. So it's really honestly a great deal for everything that you get, and we are working on adding things to it. Hopefully we'll actually have more information about that next month. And one of the other things we're working on to kind of make a voice experience a lot better is we've been working on voice hardware. So that's one of the things we've been working on as well, to make sure we can have everybody have the choice of what they actually need. Like I said, that's one of our values, having that choice. And so far, the only choice is really DIY, or you use your Google, Apple, Amazon devices to actually control your home. So we want to give an option that's a little bit better. But if you buy any of the hardware that Nabu Casa develops, that's also going through and making sure that our salaries are paid. So one of the things that people will struggle with the most getting onboarded is YAML. Honestly, like YAML is one of the worst things for people to pick up. A lot of people don't like white space coding at all, and YAML is very much based on that. One of the things we did to combat that is we added Markdown into it. So when you go and you edit the YAML, you can see the lines that actually show you how many indents are done for each line now. And so we're trying to make it a lot easier for people to come in and use this stuff, but there really is a high learning curve, and use the community 100%. There's so many great experts in the community who know what they're talking about and can get you pointed in the right direction. So,
And I don't know, like the high learning curve, I would say shouldn't scare you away, because I think that's more for like
Nah.
the more advanced configurations. If you're just doing some basic light switching and things like that, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is just super straightforward. As long as you know where to find things in the settings, that's really the biggest complication, right? There's some stuff that's not very intuitive still, but we're working on it. And so, but if you are a developer and on your spare time and want to actually contribute to something that could be open or local stuff like that, or even want to contribute to something we already have in there, like check out our GitHub repo. You can see everything that we actually have on there, and you can contribute very easily. So yeah, no, there's a lot of different ways you can help support us.
Awesome.
Group devices. Oh man, group devices are an interesting thing here. Group devices in the big box companies are, I think they're kind of like just a mix up of the UI overall rather than actually connecting the devices. And grouping devices in Home Assistant isn't very intuitive at first, but it is 100% needed. Like, so you have to create helpers in Home Assistant to pull together the devices to actually call them a group. But we have it set up so you can select which group you're actually going to be creating. So like a light group, a switch group, stuff like that. So we do make it easy. It's just, you have to know where to go. Yeah, ChatGPT. A lot of people actually use ChatGPT now to create those YAML stuff. GitHub actually just announced a lot of really cool things for GitHub Copilot overall, and I'm going to specify GitHub Copilot, not Windows Copilot. So GitHub Copilot is significantly improving. They added in model comparison. You can also use multiple models to code. So like they're going through and making it a lot easier to pull in those LLMs that are specifically targeted to helping coding languages, which really improves just the shoot and blast kind of way it's been. So GitHub is doing really, really good now.
Thank you, Missy. Thanks for joining. Thanks for wasting a perfectly good hour with us. Enjoy if you're in the US. Have a pleasant Thanksgiving. We'll see you in December.
Thanks, everyone.
See y'all later.
Bye,
Thanks.
guys.
Matthew, I don't think we're ever going to get Windows 12. Remember, Windows 10 was the last operating system they ever released? Oh, wait, we're on 11, aren't we?